Hello, today I've got another improv session for you. I think this is improv session number 3. And I'm trying to mix things up style-wise here. I started off with a kind of mellow Neil Young type groove, and I've done some blues. Today I'm going to be trying to play some country. So the idea is I'm going to improvise over this backing track, then I'm going to talk about my approach to soloing over these particular chords, give you some ideas and options, and then I'd like you to have a go yourselves. I'm going to make this backing track available completely free on my website, so I'd really like you to have a go at this. Anyway, let's get started. I'm going to have a play and see what happens. There we have it. I think I did 3 takes of that solo, and the last one was the one that I liked the best. A couple of little flaws in there, but I'm going to leave those in because that's what improvisation is all about, I think, and not enough flaws in modern music, I don't think. I want to start by talking about the chord progression, then I'm going to get into some ideas and options for soloing. And some of these ideas are going to be quite obvious and easy, others are going to be a bit more advanced. So no matter what your level of ability, there's going to be something here for you to try out when you improvise on this track. So Folsom Prison Blues, obviously a country classic, and it's a country standard, and it's a song that comes up a lot if you're going out and jamming with other people, so it's really worth knowing how to improvise over this chord progression. Now, as the name suggests, it's a blues progression, but it's a blues progression with a couple of little quirks, which I think it's worth pointing out. Now, I've decided to play this in the key of E. I think Johnny Cash tended to play it in the key of F because he used a capo at the 1st fret. There are versions in F sharp as well, and there are some Johnny Cash versions that are actually in the key of E. But I like it in the key of E because you've got lots of nice open string stuff available to you. So it's a fairly standard 1-4-5 blues progression. The 1 chord is the E, 4 chord is A, 5 chord is B. You could make all of those chords 7th chords if you wanted to. And the first of these little quirks is that when you get to the 5 chord, you're staying on the 5 chord for 2 bars. You don't get the 5-4 back to the 1 thing that you get in a lot of 12-bar blues progressions. It's just 5, 5, and then back to the 1. So that's the first thing to watch out for. And the other little quirk to watch out for is that listening to the Johnny Cash recordings, he's actually playing an 11-bar blues, or you could describe it as a 22-bar blues, depending on how you count this tune. It's a kind of cut time country thing. But essentially what is going on is that he's lopped off the last bar of the 12, and I think this serves to give the whole track a bit more urgency, and the next verse just comes around a little bit faster than you might think. I mean, it sounds completely natural how Johnny Cash does it, but it's just something to watch out for when you're improvising over this chord progression. One of the most important things for me when you're taking a solo or doing an improvisation is to start strongly, and you want to start with a strong and memorable and a clear idea, and then that gives you a really good jumping off point, and the rest of the solo can follow from that. It could be anything you like, but what I chose to do in my solo was to actually quote the signature lick that you hear on the Johnny Cash recordings of this tune. It's just such a great phrase. It's clear, it's strong, it's memorable. So I started with that phrase. Then I can just repeat it, or I can repeat it with some variations. Then go somewhere else, and it gives you this kind of thread which can lead you through the rest of the improvisation. So my point here is to start with something strong, start with something memorable, and then you've really got something to build your solo on top of. I think if you start off with something shapeless, like an aimless noodle or something which hasn't got a nice rhythm, then you're in trouble right from the start of the solo, and it's probably only going to go downhill from that point onwards. People ask, what are you thinking when you take a solo? And I suppose ideally you're not thinking of that much, you're just letting it flow and letting it happen. But I suppose somewhere at the back of my mind I'm thinking in terms of scales, I'm thinking in terms of the chords we're playing over and the notes that belong to those chords. So I'm thinking chord tones, And then I'm perhaps thinking country licks and vocabulary. So let's take the first of those things, scales. And the first scale option, the most obvious thing that springs to mind, is it's a blues in E, therefore we can play the E minor pentatonic scale or the E blues scale. And I did in fact play quite a lot of just simple E minor pentatonic in my solo, I think. And I tried to play a little bit all over the fretboard. So this is where it's really useful to know your 5 different caged E minor pentatonic shapes. So I think I touched on most of the positions here. So you've got the open position. Nice use of open strings in there, and then you can work your way up the fretboard into some of those other positions. I think I played some kind of lick up around the 7th fret. This little box here in the 5th position is very nice as well, and I think I ended the solo up in the 12th fret, position 1, an octave higher. The other main scale option you've got, I think, is the major pentatonic scale. And playing in a country style, what I generally like to do is to follow the chord progression with the respective major pentatonic scale. So over the 1 chord, over the E chord, I'm going to be playing E major pentatonic. And then when the chord changes to the 4 chord, to A, I will change the scale and I'll play an A major pentatonic. And then for the 5 chord, that's B major, B7, and you can play B major pentatonic. And major pentatonic, I think that gives you a bit more of a country sound. It's got a sweeter sound than the minor pentatonic. There's of course nothing wrong with just using the minor pentatonic throughout the chord progression, but perhaps that doesn't sound quite country enough for you, in which case you might like to get some of this sweeter major pentatonic stuff in there as well. And if you're following the chords with the major pentatonic scale, then it really sounds like you're outlining the chord progression and playing the changes properly. I find myself using a lot of double stops, and in particular a lot of 6ths when I'm soloing in a country guitar style, and that gives you this kind of sound. It's a very characteristic, sweet country guitar sound. And they're called 6ths because in each pair of notes that I'm playing here, they're 6 letters apart in the musical alphabet. And I have actually done a video previously where I've gone in depth looking at some of these 6 sounds, and I'll put a link to that up above. But in the improvisation which I just played, I think I was largely using 6ths played on the D and B strings. And again, I was thinking about the chord I was playing over, and that was really dictating my note choice. So over the 1 chord, an E7 chord, I'm thinking about the E mixolydian scale, and the 6ths are taken from the notes in that scale. And the way I like to think about it is these shapes kind of live within familiar chord shapes. So if you've got an E7th chord on the D and the B strings, you've got this little 6th interval, and then you can move that around, sort of keeping within the mixolydian scale, the E mixolydian scale. So, and then when the harmony changes, when you go to the 4 chord, then you've got another set of 6ths based on the 4 chord. So, and then when you go to the 5 chord is a B7, and then back to the so that's 6ths. You can't really have a country solo without some string bending, and in particular you hear a lot of double stop string bends giving you that kind of pedal steel sound. Now my go-to country bending lick is this one, and I've actually done an entire video where I go into this particular lick in some detail and talk about the theory and give you some variations on it. But the essential idea is this: you want to find the root note of the chord that you're playing over. In this case I'm thinking E, and I've got my root note here, 9th fret on the 3rd string. Then I'm going to go up 2 frets higher and I'm going to bend. This is an F sharp, I'm bending it up to a G sharp, so it's the 2nd being bent up to the 3rd of the chord. And whilst I'm doing that, I'm also holding down this B note, which is the 5th. So, and you can play those two notes at the same time, or you can play them one after the other. And you can of course follow the chords with that lick, so all you need to do is think about the chord you're playing over. There's our root note and there's the lick, and over the 5 chord. I'm going to let you into a secret, and that's that when I'm improvising, I'm not just playing this divinely inspired stuff that I've never played before in my guitar career. I'm actually quite often falling back on familiar licks and stock phrases, and I can then of course reinvent them and rearrange them and change them about a bit on the spot, but I've still got these phrases which I've learned and worked on which I can throw in there. And I think that's particularly the case when I'm playing country music. It's not like I'm playing country guitar all the time and I'm some kind of virtuoso in this style, and it's actually quite comforting to fall back on some of these stock phrases and know that they're going to work. So I can't remember exactly what I did in that opening solo, but I'm pretty sure that at one point I was playing this kind of lick, and this is definitely one of these really nice stock phrases which is very useful and very versatile. I think I actually featured this idea in one of my nice lick videos. This is all based off of a triad shape, so if I'm playing over an A chord or an A7th chord, I'm thinking about my D shape triad, and I'm actually going to need to refinger that triad. So instead of playing it as you normally would, I'm going to play it like this with fingers 2, 3 and 4, and then I've got my first finger free to play this G note, which is the flat 7, and what I'm doing is I'm pulling off from my little finger to my first finger. That's the root pulling off to the flat 7, giving you a nice 7th chord sound. And you could think in terms of this A7th in the D form kind of a shape. And then if you throw in a bit of hybrid picking, again that's a very common country device that I find myself doing a lot. I'm using pick and fingers here, so my pick is playing the 3rd string, and I'm using my middle finger and my ring finger to snap on the top 2 string. And that's the idea, and it's not fixed. I'm playing around with the rhythm here. There are various rhythmic choices that you've got. Then of course you can move that around, so you just need to think triad shapes. So if you're playing over the 1 chord, or over the 5 chord, let me talk a bit about the gear that I'm using today, and I'm using what has become my default country guitar setup. I know that very easily I can get great country guitar tones with this gear, and the guitar I'm using is my Telecaster. This is a 52 reissue Telecaster from the 1990s. I've had this guitar for years and years. It's kind of my workhorse guitar, I think. Amp I'm using today is my Fender Deluxe, and this particular Fender Deluxe is one of the reissue hand-wired versions that came out a few years ago. I really love the sound of this amp. I'm going into the normal channel. Volume is about 3, so I'm not playing super loud, and treble is about 6, bass is 5. Then a couple of pedals as well. I'm using a compressor, which I do tend to use when I'm going for country style guitar sounds, and this compressor is an MXR Dynacomp, and this is one of the Script logo reissues that came out a few years back. And the other pedal is my J-Rocket Archer overdrive pedal, and I'm not really using it for overdrive. There's no real noticeable overdrive in this tone, but I think it just warms up the sound a bit. I think sometimes when you go straight into a clean Fender amp, there's a danger that things can get a little bit harsh. I think the Archer just takes some of those harsh edges off the sound. That's it for this video. Remember, the backing track is going to be available on my website completely free. I'll put a link to that below. And I'd really like you to have a go at this, and if anyone wants to record themselves playing along to this track, really be interested to hear what you come up with, so you can share that with me if you like via one of the various social media platforms that I'm present on. Now in this video I've deliberately not gone into any detail about the solo that I played at the start of this video. It was a one-off improvised solo, and to have gone into it note for note would have taken away that improvisation focus of this video. However, I am planning to do a Patreon only video this week where I go back and learn that solo and tab it out and then break it down into all the various parts. And if you're interested in learning more about soloing in a country style, then this video might be of some interest to you. So check that out if you'd like to. You can join my Patreon page, pay what you like. Again, I'll put a link to that underneath this video. But thanks for watching. I shall see you next time. Bye bye.